So today I want to share the truth about emotional eating recovery that no one shares. So if you're new here, welcome. My name is Michelle. I'm a certified holistic nutritionist specializing in emotional eating. So if you've been trying to heal your emotional eating and it feels like it's taking forever and you just can't seem to get that shift, you're not alone. This is definitely a process. It doesn't happen overnight. It's not linear. It's not quick, but it is so worth it when you get to the other side. So most women that I work with are ambitious. They can make things happen in their lives in a quick amount of time. They are going after their goals and they're trying the latest diet or the mindset fix, and they think that, why haven't I resolved my emotional eating? The thing is that emotional eating is complex. There's trauma involved. There are different layers. And so it's not going to happen with a 30-day meal plan. It's not going to happen overnight. It is possible to resolve it, not in years, in a shorter amount of time, but it does take time. And so when you don't resolve your emotional eating after a short amount of time, sometimes you might think, oh, something's wrong with me. I've failed because I can make other things happen quickly in my life. Emotional eating doesn't work like that. And so emotional eating is not really about the food and controlling food and being able to sustain, that quick fix diet. It is about what you're using food for. So why is healing emotional eating not linear? I mean, honestly, anything in life is not linear. It is sort of like we move forward, we move back a little, we move forward, we move back a little, and healing happens in spirals. So when I'm working with women, I can almost see that this is what's happening for them. We might peel one layer off the onion and then another layer appears. And so if you have a very fixed mindset that you should be healed in a certain amount of time, this is going to bother you. You're going to think that you failed, but that is not what's happening. It is just part of the process. So just to give you a tangible example, a lot of the times the pattern that I see with women when they work with me in my 12-week container is that we heal one layer of their emotional eating within the first few weeks of the program, or by the midway point. And then they have another layer arise. And when they went through that first layer and they felt like, yes, this is working, I can feel the shift. And then another layer arises or another layer of triggers. They think, oh no, I failed. I've gone backwards. And it's not that they've gone backwards. It's a new layer presenting to now meet your true needs, to now move into the pattern deeper, to resolve it at a deeper level. And this is amazing. That means that we're getting deeper and deeper into the root to really shift the pattern. And this is what we need to see. We don't want to, it's not like, sweeping your stairs and you sweep it and it's completely clean. Although stairs do get dirty, everything kind of comes back. So it's not like you shift your emotional eating pattern and it's done in one instant. There are layers to it, and each individual is going to have their unique set of triggers, their unique life experiences. You can think back to times when you've had moments or maybe years where you didn't emotionally eat and you might have thought, oh, I'm done with this pattern. And then something happens and you're back in it and you're like, why did this happen? I thought I was done with it. You hadn't reached that deeper level. You weren't triggered enough to really go to food. When something more deep happens that you need to go to food to cope, to manage those emotions, that's when the pattern really shows up, and it means that you haven't healed it. And so we need to go deeper into these layers. So when, I'm working with clients and one layer comes up, and then they feel like they've resolved it, and then another layer and they feel like they failed, the ones that are actually really open to moving through that layer are the ones that succeed. Clients who are aware that healing takes time, that every time the trigger comes up, that they have the tools to move through it, and they meet themselves with more compassion and acceptance, are the ones that really succeed at the program. So I've had clients that when they have this mindset, they know they have the tools, they know what the pattern's really about. When they use the program after we've finished the meditations, those are the ones have more long-term success. So I had one client that finished the program and she hadn't emotionally eaten for 6 weeks, which was a really long period of time for her. But she said to herself, I don't know if the pattern will come back. It's not like I've finished this pattern. And she was the one that after, I talked to her a year later, 2 years later, she hadn't emotionally eaten or binge, but she was open to it happening and knowing she had the tools. I had another client, the same thing happened. And at last I spoke to her, it's been over a year, and she went from having binges daily to, when I spoke to her, she's like, every couple of months something might happen, but I have the meditations to go back to. And that's amazing progress. And we really need to look at that and see that it might pop up, but I have the tools. It's not that I did it and I'm done and I just move forward, because healing happens in these layers. So what does it look like to really move through your emotional eating? It means that you have more compassion for yourself, like those clients who said, I'm open to it happening. You have more acceptance. You see healing as not being so linear, that it's ongoing. And it also looks like a shorter bounce back time after an emotional eating episode. So it happens, you have the tools, you move through it, you know what's going on. And also it looks like having more space between emotional eating episodes. So this was my own journey. When I started to really see what worked for my emotional eating pattern, my emotional eating went from happening, maybe weekly or a couple of times a week to once a month to once every 6 months to now it's been over 10 years since I've emotionally eaten. And honestly, I don't think I could go to food to deal with my emotions, to emotionally eat and to numb out, because I've become so aware of what I truly need that my body is just like, no, food is just like a Band-Aid. It doesn't work. It doesn't mean that I don't go to food for comfort or have foods that really feel good after a stressful period of my life, but it's out of nourishing my body, giving myself the nutrients that were depleted during that stressful time. And so food, when we really heal this pattern, can be used for that. It's meant to nourish our bodies, to give back to our bodies, but it's not meant to be a Band-Aid to meeting our true needs. So as you move through the pattern, like I said, I can't go to food to soothe myself. It looks like really recognizing what you need. So you have an emotional eating episode, you bounce back, you know what you need to be with what's coming up, those emotions, that discomfort. It's really about moving through those emotions. You're able to meet your true needs, to stay with that, and then to really get to the other side, to regulate your nervous system, to meet your deeper needs, to get to calm and ease. So I'll share a little bit more about my own journey. So when I started to resolve my emotional eating, when I really started to get into the pattern, I was actually living in Korea, and I had flipped my life upside down, thinking I would live in a different country, have a different job, just have a different life, and that would maybe resolve a lot of the issues that I had and help me to just, feel okay and not be triggered. But my emotional eating really intensified, and I had to roll up my sleeves and start figuring it out because, I'd gone to therapy, I was doing diets, I had a personal trainer, I was doing all the things to help me, and nothing was moving the needle because it wasn't focused and I wasn't really getting into my pattern. And so I started to see my pattern and understand true and emotional hunger and really know what to do when I was triggered and what this pattern was really about. And so I started to really use this as I dove deeper into my own emotional eating episodes, because they were really powerful. They were really intense, and they seemed to come out of nowhere when I was in Korea because I was very triggered. And so they were also really debilitating because I would be crying after I felt so disgusted with myself. And so when I stopped and I started to figure out what was working, I had to do it after an emotional eating episode. So I would stop, I would sort of go through what was going on for me, what might have triggered it, where was I, kind of going into the trigger and seeing what was it bringing up. And so that happened for a while. I had to do it after I had an emotional eating episode. And eventually I started to recognize my triggers and situations that it would come up. And I was able to pause and recognize those situations more and create more space to actually do the process in real time. So I didn't go to food. I would go into the meditations and move through what was coming up for me. And that took a couple of years to do because I would be triggered into emotional eating. And then I tried to, I would just have healthier food on hand to emotionally eat. And then it eventually became that I could pause and move through it. And that started to really help me. And then I thought I was on a really good path for about 6 months. I didn't emotionally eat. And then this trigger came on and I was like, oh my God, I'm back in this pattern. I thought I was resolving it. But I did the same process. And the next layer for me was really to make an aligned choice in my life. I had to change out of a work environment that I was in because it was very toxic. It had triggered such a deep core wound in me. And then after that, it became very clear. So after that sort of situation, my emotional eating seemed to subside. I was really excited about learning about food. I was very aware of my hunger. And then over time, I started to just feel, over time, the process, I just felt more safe with food. I started to learn about nutrition. I started to really nourish my body and feel comfortable in my body, and all of those sort of things sort of dissipated. So after that, it became a lot easier. I wasn't triggered into emotional eating. I was working on my relationship with food because I had been in such a diet mentality. So I was learning how to nourish myself. I was really working with body acceptance and just using the tools deeper and deeper. And that is sometimes what happens. Sometimes we just get triggered into something deeper. But for me, it's been over 10 years since I've had an emotional eating episode, and I've been through even more intense things in that moment. And so I know for me, I have the tools. I know how to meet my deeper needs. I cannot use food to cover those things up or to use them for my emotions. I have to actually meet my needs and get into the root. And I think that's the power of resolving this pattern, that you actually start moving emotions through your body. You start really getting back to a calmer state in your nervous system, and you know what to do when you're triggered. And so I just want to say that healing is possible. You can shift your pattern. You can meet your needs. You can learn how to do that because you weren't taught this. And so it is so possible to do this. And so it's not about being perfect, it's about feeling empowered, that you have the tools to really meet this pattern and give yourself what you need. And there is a sense of freedom in that, of sovereignty in that. There is a sense of ease and confidence in that because you're literally shifting your nervous system. So it gets back to ease and confidence. And if you're on this journey and it's taking a bit longer, you're doing better than you think you are, especially if what you're doing feels like it's working. It does take some time. And with support, that sort of timeline shrinks, but keep going if you are having progress. And so if you are looking for a trauma-informed and holistic approach to resolving your emotional eating, you feel like you need more support on this journey, I'd love to invite you to find out more about the Emotional Eating Evolution Program. This is my 12-week container. It has the process, it has the support, the one-to-one support and group support, and the deeper tools to help you shift this pattern so that you can get to ease and confidence around food and in your body in your own timeline. So I'd love to invite you to find out more about that. The links are below. So thank you so much for watching. If you have any questions, please let me know. Please be sure to like and subscribe, and I look forward to sharing more with you, and I hope you have a great day.